In this video, we're going to talk about how Spotify may have saved the music industry. Imagine it's the year 2000. Most people listening to music on CDs. You probably had no idea what a World Trade Center was. Music piracy was rampant, and if you're around my age, you're probably still watching Nickelodeon shows. Around these years, Napster was just kind of distributing music illegally, and eventually artists started suing Napster itself, but also the fans who had downloaded their music, specifically Metallica, but also Dr. Dre and some other artists. And people in the music industry were banding behind to try to fight this because they saw the impact that it was making. Throughout this time, there were other peer-to-peer music downloading sites like LimeWire that came out, which is the one that I used when I was a kid stealing music. But also the Pirate Bay came out around this time, which is more of a torrenting site, right? A peer-to-peer torrenting file transferring site. The Pirate Bay is still around today, but over the years, like a lot of these platforms either got shut down or shut down and came back up, or shut down and rebranded and bought out by someone else. And Napster is around today, but it's a legal streaming platform. But Napster, back in the day, was the illegal streaming platform or illegal download platform that kind of redefined everything for the music industry. And keep in mind that all of this happened before iTunes even existed. iTunes came out in 2003, and in the first year, it sold $70 million of legal internet music downloads. 70 million songs at 99 cents per song. And Steve Jobs said back then, we believe that 80% of the people stealing stuff don't want to be. There's just no legal alternative. So we said, let's create a legal alternative to this. Everybody wins. Music companies win. The artists win. Apple wins. And the user wins because he gets a better service and doesn't want to have to be a thief. So, that's obviously solved a certain problem, but it didn't solve the whole problem. And if we flip over into a graph that kind of sums all this up, this is the music industry recorded revenue growth or shrinkage over time, and it goes up to 2030, and we're going to get up to that in a moment. At about the year 2000, the global recorded music revenue was at about $20 billion. And then around 2000-ish, things start dropping pretty steeply. Like Napster was around 1999, LimeWire was shortly after that. Things keep falling throughout that. iTunes came around here, and you see that there's some hope, right? Some people are actually buying downloaded music, but it's just not nearly enough to keep up with the overall drop. And also, a lot of people that are buying digital downloads, instead of being forced to buy CDs like they used to, maybe now they're only buying 2 songs, right? So even though there might be a lot of people buying in this download category, maybe they're not spending as much money because they don't have to buy a whole album anymore. And eventually, we get down to this drop here. The music industry is at half what it was about 10 years prior. Now, in this period of time is when a lot of the deals with streaming services were being signed. Spotify came out or was founded in 2006, but it didn't enter the UK and the US and stuff until like 2010 and 2011. And this would have been when, like, this kind of 2008 period is when a lot of those deals with major record labels would have been signed to allow their catalog to be put on streaming platforms. And there were other streaming platforms around that time too. I remember back in the day, even back maybe earlier, I was streaming music. I used to play poker with my friends when I was in like middle school or something in my basement, and we were streaming music. I don't remember what platform we were using, but it wasn't Pandora. It was some kind of like internet radio meets, like you could choose your own song and stream it, but you could like buy credits for how many songs you would listen to. No idea what it's called, so let me know in the comments if you remember that. But this period of time is when a lot of these deals would be being made. And so Spotify started getting a big presence around here, and you could kind of see what happened afterwards. Like now we're here, and the music industry 20 years later has recovered to what it was back in the year 2000 with a projection to nearly double in the next 7 to 10 years, right? Going up to $40 billion in just streaming, pretty much just streaming revenue alone, right? But this was a bet that was made back here that, okay, we're not going to get as much money as we want per person, per listen, per stream, per album, whatever. But at least we'll be getting something. And if the volume makes sense, then this model can make sense, and we'll kind of figure it out as it goes. And that's kind of what's been happening this whole journey. Now, who knows if this is a projection, right? This is a Goldman Sachs investment projection, essentially. Some new, innovative, disruptive technology might completely decimate it, just like it decimated physical sales back in the year 2001 or so, and just like it did to downloads back around when streaming came in. We have no idea, right? But in a way, at least for the time, it kind of looks like Spotify and other streaming services really saved the music industry. Now it's at the point where all of us are complaining about how the model works, which I think is fair because there's a lot of problems with how streaming works. But now we're at the point where we're kind of starting to look for something else, whether these streaming platforms adapt and give it to us as consumers and as artists, or someone else comes along and just kills them like they killed all these other things that happened. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting in this report, which, by the way, this is the Goldman Sachs Music in the Air report, they talk about some risks of what could go wrong in their projections. And one of the risks they talk about is pricing going up, which is very topical because Spotify's raising their prices this week in the US and a bunch of other countries. They're raising their prices by 10%, which is a great thing because one, is going to lead to more money in artists' pocket, which if you don't understand why that is, it's because the Spotify has a percentage cut between themselves and artists and labels and rights holders. So if the overall money goes up, not only does Spotify make more money, but artists make more money. But they're actually mentioning here pricing going up as a potential downside because, if artists and labels pressure streaming services to limit their free offers or charge more for premium subscriptions, then maybe a lot of people are canceling and they flip back to piracy. On the flip side, if streaming services bypass labels to sign deals with artists directly, labels may retaliate by pulling their catalog. So if Spotify were to say, okay, let's sign this artist to be exclusive to Spotify, just like they signed Joe Rogan to be exclusive to Spotify, then people might retaliate, which honestly, that's how movie streaming services work right now, right? You don't just have Netflix and you can watch everything anymore. You have to have Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus and Hulu and HBO Max, etc., to watch all the shows and movies that you want. And that could be how the music industry works. You have to subscribe to like 20 different platforms, or maybe 20 is exaggeration, maybe 4 different platforms to get everything. And a lot of people won't do that. So you'll pick which ones have your favorite music, and you might never listen to certain people. And that has a lot of advantages, but also a lot of disadvantages, right? Imagine if you're trying to market your music and you can't reliably target, more than half the people out there, right? Because if half the people don't have access to your song because they don't pay for said streaming service, then how are they going to, they're not going to subscribe to some monthly subscription just to hear this artist they've never heard of. Now, on the flip side, that also means that there will effectively be 4 times more money if there were 4 times streaming services. So streams would probably pay 4 times better, but it will be significantly harder, especially as an indie artist, to get people to check out your stuff. If you want to read this report for yourself, I'll link to it in the description. It's the Goldman Sachs Music in the Air report. If you want to learn more about music industry stuff, you can check out this playlist right here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.